Okay, in this video we're going to continue with the problems on section 5.3, and the first one is number 15 that we're going to do. And 15 says rewrite this as one trig function. So we have tan of 19 plus tan of 47 divided by 1 minus tan of 19 tan of 47. And if you watch the videos or you read the chapter, you know that this is one of the tan A plus B, tan A minus B identities. So this is a tan U plus V identity. So the tan U plus V identity can be written as a sine U plus V over cosine U plus V like we did in the last video, or it can be written as tan U plus tan V over 1 minus tan U times tan V. So it fits into this second model that we have here. And we can see that U is the 19 and V is the 47. And so this is exactly the same as tan of 19 degrees plus 47 degrees. And when we add those up, we get tan of 56 degrees. So that expression is the same as tan of 66 degrees. Whoopsie. 19 plus 47 is 66. Okay, number 17. We have cosine of pi over 7, cosine of x, plus sine of pi over 7, sine of x. So we're looking at which identity does this fit into, and this fits into the cosine of u minus v is equal to cosine u cosine v minus plus sine u sine v. And so u is pi over 7 and v is the x. And so we can rewrite that as cosine of pi over 7 minus x. And that's all there is to that one. And then we skip down to 24. And on 24, we're going to prove, right? It says prove the identity. So tan of x minus pi over 2. So 24, we're doing a proof. Tan of x minus pi over 2 is equal to the cotangent, negative cotangent of x. That's what we're trying to prove. And so to start this one, we're going to expand out our tan of x minus pi over 2. So I'm going to do it with the sine over cosine. So that's the same as sine of x minus pi over 2 over cosine of x minus pi over 2. And then we'll expand those out with we're trying to prove that equals negative cotan of x. So sine of x minus pi over 2, that's a sine of u minus v, where x is u and pi over 2 is v. So we would have sine x cosine pi over 2 minus cosine of x sine of pi over 2 over cosine of x cosine of pi over 2 minus sine of x sine of pi over 2. And we can put in what the pi over 2's are. So cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So the first one becomes sine of x times 0. And then because cosine of pi over 2 is 0. And cosine of pi over 2 is 0. And sine of pi over 2 is 1. And so we're just plugging in those numbers. Minus cosine of x times 1 over cosine of x times 0 minus sine of x times 1. Oh, I have a sign wrong here. Let's see. This is sine of x minus pi over 2 keeps the same sign. This one should have been a plus. I'm sorry. Cosine of x minus pi over 2 is cosine x cosine pi over 2 plus sine of x sine of pi over 2. Okay, so this first term here is 0, the second term here is 0, and so we get minus cosine x over sine of x. And we know we want to always end our proof saying that the left side equals the right side, so minus cotangent of x equals minus cotangent of x. And we would just bring that minus cotangent of x all the way down with us. And that's 24. Okay, let's take a look at the next proof that it asks us. We have 25, and 25 asks us to prove cosine of x minus pi over 2 is equal to sine of x. Okay, so we're going to expand this first term out. Cosine of x, cosine of pi over 2. There's a minus in there. This is a u minus v, and so there's a plus on this identity. Plus sine of x, sine of pi over 2. And we're trying to prove that that equals sine of x. And we know that cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So this whole term becomes 0 plus sine of pi over 2 is 1. Plus sine of x times 1 equals sine of x. And so we have sine of x equals sine of x. So that's problem number 25. Sorry, I didn't write that down. And let's do one more in this video. We have 27. So 27, the proof says sine of x plus pi over 6. And we're trying to prove, pi over 6, prove that that equals root 3 over 2 times the sine of x plus 1/2 times the cosine of x. So this is a u plus v. So we're going to plug into our sine of u plus v formula. Sine of u, sine of x, sine of cosine of v, cosine of pi over 6, plus cosine of x, sine of v. Let me just fix that. Cosine. And then we know cosine of pi over 6 is root 3 over 2. So we have sine of x times root 3 over 2 plus cosine of x and sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. And so if I just put our coefficients in the front of these, we have root 3 over 2 times the sine of x plus 1/2 times the cosine of x. And that's what I was trying to prove. Right? So we're not changing anything on the right side of that equals, and we've got that proof done. And then 31 through 35 on this page is matching. So I think you can do the matching with your calculator if you take a look at those. Yeah, so you can use your grapher on those ones. Okay, so tune into the next video and we'll finish up the 38 through 48 questions.